So I think our agenda for today is basically that we wanted to schedule this meeting as an opportunity to talk through our reopening plans and any COVID-related questions or concerns. We had some presentations at the board meeting last night and got a lot of really great questions from our board members. And so certainly today would be an opportunity, to the extent that there are questions about that information that was presented or follow-up questions. I have asked Shelby Rebeck to be here. We've got Sherry Demeline and Leanne Neal are all sort of on the bench. And so I had let Jill know we'd be asking the team to allow them to present information so that I can make sure that any information that we provide is 100% accurate. And I think the best way to do that is to have it come from the source. And I think Dr. Neal had a meeting that was ending at 1:30, so she should be here. So to the extent there are questions, my thought with her specifically was about childcare for our employees. She'll be available to answer those questions. So I don't know what a good starting point is. If anyone wants to suggest a topic to start with or go through a question list, I don't know, Jill.
Were you saying that Shelby had to leave at a certain time?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I think that we can start with questions for her.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think one of them, and I think Jay, you had kind of mentioned it to me, wondering how the district could support staff or students that have a hearing loss, and how that's going to it could be greatly affected by people wearing masks. I didn't know if that was on one of the 8 exceptions of wearing them, or.
It is.
Okay.
And actually, Sherry has done probably the most work around that. Sherry, you probably can answer better than me.
Sure. So we do have clear masks that we've purchased for students and staff to ensure that not only the individual enunciating, but the individuals who would need to read. As well as if necessary, we can look at amplification systems as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know that in my classroom, when I've had a student with that need, I now have like a portable microphone, which can help, but I mean, I think the clear masks will help a lot.
So my involvement with Sherry on purchasing that for her staff and her students has been just the safety piece of it. And that is that, some of those clear masks, in fact, Sherry and I learned the hard way. The first ones she ordered, they had the plastic and they had a spongy piece up here and spongy piece down here, but were completely open on the sides. And that provides no protection. If you can have respiratory droplets escaping, that is not safe. So we learned the hard way. And then that's just how these things are. We're not familiar with all of this PPE. It's not something that's typically in our world. So, now we're going to get some, and we have a vendor that is secure source and all that to get some. And I did go ahead and order them for the nurses as well, so that anytime there's a student or staff member who comes in who needs that piece.
I think to clarify, some staff members were concerned because they rely on lip reading a lot, and I think that's the part that needs to kind of be addressed.
And Sherry, didn't we order them for whole classes when the staff member was the one who needed to see?
That is correct. So we do have a couple of, I know for sure of one classroom that has requested that to ensure that could be accommodated. So absolutely. And if there are others, we're absolutely able to do that.
Okay, good.
All right. Hold on. Sorry. I'm through some of the things. This actually might not really be for Shelby, but it's related. Last night, didn't you say if you had been exposed and you needed a test, even if your test came back negative, you'd still have to stay home for 14 days?
Yeah, that's correct. And that complies with CDC, KDHE,
Right.
Johnson County. There is no way to get a free pass, get out of jail
Right.
free. Once you've been exposed, you quarantine for 14 days because that's the incubation period of the virus. So even if on day 5 you go get a test and it's negative, you could still come up positive on day 7.
Right, okay. The district has posted the Families First Coronavirus Relief, that was called, Relief Act. And so if a staff member had to be gone for more than one time, does it then go into like the 2/3 rate of pay? We don't know that, case by case. I just had someone ask, like, if they'd been exposed twice, how that was gonna work with their days.
Yeah, so I'm going to let Rachel tag team this with me. I haven't dealt with any of these for the certified staff. We've had a few classified staff who've already utilized the emergency leave, but to my understanding, the approach that we're going to take is after they've spent those initial days, they'd be asked to use leave that they have available to them within their pool.
And I do think, and again, I want to make sure I'm providing accurate information, that we are treating exposures that occur in the workplace
Exactly.
differently than an exposure that might occur
Okay.
outside of the workplace. So that if it is an in the workplace exposure and you are required to quarantine, that is paid administrative leave that would be provided, with the caveat that many of our staff members can work remotely if they are not themselves physically ill. So if you are physically ill, we're not going to be asking you to work, we're going to be asking you to take care of yourself and recover. But should it be the district asking you to quarantine because of an at-work exposure, that is not going against your available leave under the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, or your paid district-provided leave. That would not count. We would not start running against either one of those. However, if you are in a situation where you have 2 exposures outside of the workplace and you have exhausted your leave, at that point you would have to access your available paid leave. And of course, Human Resources is always going to work with people to make sure that we do our best to keep their job protected and, to explain all the options available to people.
And I would just add to that the county came out with guidelines. We were made aware of them on Thursday, and they'll be official today. We're supposed to get them today from the county. If all parties are masked and staying 6 feet away from each other, there is no quarantine necessary. So I feel like if our students and staff can do a really good job of masking properly and practicing 6 feet of social distance, and remember, you have to be within 6 feet for greater than 10 minutes. So that incidental contact, that's not going to count. It's got to be for 10 minutes. So I really think, if we're doing a good job, we may not have these quarantine situations as much as we originally thought we would.
Right. And then you were saying if you did have to quarantine, but you weren't physically ill and you could teach from home, you could, I guess.
That would be
teach your in-person class virtually? Okay.
That's correct. So the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, an employee is only eligible if they are unable to telework, being the key. So for many of our staff members, telework is a possibility. Again, if you are not physically ill yourself, that would be a different situation if you're physically ill yourself. Hopefully with the systems we've had set up, for example, if we had an outbreak just in a classroom and that class was going remote, then in many cases the teacher could continue working with their students in a remote setting without accessing any type of leave.
Okay.
You want me to take one?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have part-time teachers, and that when we come back, typically they have 4 work days of professional development, and now they're doing more.
Yep. So we've already talked with payroll on this. We've identified those staff members because we write them a different contract based on those full-time days that we've asked them to do on the front end. And so now they have 13, I think. I think that's the number that we're asking them to work. And so we would compensate them 1.0 of their rate for those 13 days, and then the remaining 174-ish would be paid at whatever 0.5 or 0.7 or whatever they would be. So yes, we have that formula, and those folks will be issued different contracts.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. I don't know that we have more for Shelby, but I mean, maybe stick around till.
Till your
next meeting.
deadline. Thank you for being here, Shelby.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's fantastic. So for the remote teaching expectations, it said that the remote teacher would get a 30-minute lunch and then at least a 45-minute plan. Did it say at least 45 because that's what middle school gets? Because if you add that up over 5 days, it's not the full 230 for like elementary. I wasn't
I'm
sure.
looking at Michelle.
Dr. Hubbard, were you able to hear Jill's question?
I heard the question. Read the question again.
Yeah.
I guess, where did this question come from? Was it written somewhere?
Yeah, it was a remote teaching expectations. It was a link in, I think, an email that Fulton sent out.
I think it
can't
was
remember what
the
was.
elementary, like,
It had expectations of like, you'd have like stable internet access,
quote unquote,
broadband.
typical day.
Yeah.
It would with the preference
So-
form.
Oh, with the
Now that I
preference
have
form.
the source, ask the question again, please.
Yeah, sure. It said you would get, a remote teacher would get a 30-minute lunch and then at least a 45-minute plan period. And so I was clarifying the 45-minute plan period because if that's 45 minutes over 5 days, that doesn't add up to 230 minutes of plan time that's stated for elementary. So I didn't know if that was the 45 because that's similar to middle school.
Yeah, it really should say equivalent plan time to your in-person peers.
Okay,
But we'll work on fixing that.
okay. I think this actually was answered last night by you, Michael. People keep asking if you're a remote teacher, would you be required to be in the building teaching remotely? So I think you said they could do either as long as when they're at home, they have, strong enough bandwidth and Wi-Fi to hold
Yeah.
their classes.
And as long as, administratively, that principal, that person who's overseeing them determines that they're being effective in that environment, that would be okay. But there could also be expectations of them or directives for them to come in for certain meetings as well. But yeah, there'll certainly be a blend, I would anticipate.
Jill,
Yeah,
I would add to that, I think one of the really important pieces of that is that, and this is in the expectation as well, that uninterrupted space. So I mean, if a principal continually gets a call that says the baby's crying in the background or the teacher's not logging in when they're supposed to, I mean, there's conversations, but it really is it would need to be an uninterrupted environment and a strong Wi-Fi connection.
okay. All right. And this also, I think, was discussed a little bit last night. Do we have a status on the fall stipends for sports, activities, clubs?
There is a commitment to pay those
Okay,
independent of what happens.
okay, is that including middle school?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know that I know the
'Cause I know
10th
the
one.
stipend that I received's already been.
Oh,
I've
so
been
you're
told
talking
My stipend's already been taken away.
mathletics?
Yeah.
So you
Remind me
rec-
of that.
Elementary level mathletics
And
and
the student council, I think also got told.
Okay, so I was tied into that a little bit. CNI was dealing with that as well. I'm gonna have to think about that. So the students couldn't participate because of something, is that right? Can you give me the context of what
Oh,
you
I don't
know?
know, I just got an email saying that, my math club stipend was, since we're not gonna probably be doing after-school activities, it's going to be taken away.
Okay. Can I do some research on that? Okay. I apologize.
Are you aware of any other situations like that?
I've just, in talking to a couple other people, that they were aware that theirs was taken away also.
All at the elementary level?
I don't know if it was all or just a
Okay.
few or what.
If you hear of any other specific, that would help.
I've got one for sure.
Beyond athletics?
Oh, beyond athletics?
Yeah.
No, I would have to
Okay.
contact someone else for another club.
I just had someone asking about middle school sports because I'm not sure if they'd be able to start their seasons and whatnot. And I don't know that they do conditioning in the same sense. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they can.
So the conversation was, if contracts have been issued, which for the most part they have, that we will honor those commitments. There could be and probably will be an expectation given from the athletic directors or coordinators to those staff members that, hey, you're getting this stipend. Let's do something. Make connections with kids, give them some ideas on what to do.
Okay.
Some sort of direction from them. Yeah.
Get that locker cleaned out.
Did one of you guys get this question with special ed? The last one on there?
IEPs?
No. Someone asked if they were going to be able to continue to have students going to the resource room. Is that an elementary?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I typed that one in there. I was asked, are we still going to be doing pullout or,
Oh.
you know, in regards to IEP and minutes, is that more of a, they need the, I guess the resource teachers want to know, should they be pushing in more or getting the pullout services?
So we have an obligation to, in special education, we do have to consider the environment in which the IEP is reflected. And so in some instances, we would have students that would receive those services in a general education setting, and we would need to continue to do that unless the IEP team were to come together and make some adjustments to that IEP. And then the same would apply for special education services as well. What we are advising and guiding teams to do is really look at, oftentimes in elementary, and even sometimes at the secondary level, we may have a variety of adults who are shifting to support the students, so we're working to minimize those adults who would be rotating and try to keep some consistency in that regard, but we do have to provide those services across those different locations.
All right.
Can I go backwards real
Yeah,
quick?
please do.
Found the string of emails. All right, so it started a little bit with elementary coordinators and things like that. They were unaware that we made a commitment to pay all supplementals, and so they kind of made a suggestion that, hey, let's discontinue that. But then I gave the directive that, hey, this is what we're doing, and so you should have gotten that. So if you haven't, we need to issue that.
That I should, what?
You should get the athletic supplemental.
That I should be getting it?
Yeah, anyone who had it last year and had a previous commitment to doing that should get it.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Schumann.
Yeah, thank you.
Should that contact be made with their principal, not HR?
I think, who, did your principal just communicate that to you? Yeah. Maybe if you're okay with it, communicate with your principal, and if they have questions, ask me.
This one's not necessarily related to all this stuff, but, I mean, I guess it is because it's leave. Just want to make sure that the people in either HR or payroll know our newer language on leave for parental, like after having a birth of a child or adoption. Because I had a teacher that reached out to me with questions about it and had been told that they would only be allowed to take 6 weeks if they were doing 6 weeks versus 8 weeks, 8 weeks if it was a C-section. And so I just want to make sure that they knew it's actually, the teachers can do 12 weeks of leave, and it can be paid or unpaid depending on their bank.
Right.
So just,
And that was new last year, right?
Yes.
Or-
well, it might have been 17, 18.
Oh, it might,
We settled the
It
year
wasn't
before.
Oh, you were
19.
part of it, so it'd be 18, 19.
It wasn't 1920, it was 18.
19.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah,
it.
so I knew it was new, and you and I had some
It
discussions
is, there's a lot of
on
people that don't even know.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, I think our staff was pretty aware of it, so any specific cases, send them to
Send to
me.
you, okay.
Yeah, and we'll work through it.
Okay, cool.
And we are, I mean, that language is something that we paid very careful attention to
Sure.
as we've tried to work with people on their leave options.
Right.
I think most of our professional employees are aware of the extended leave options available to them under the PNA, but I know that there have been a couple where we have reminded them of those options.
Right.
So we're trying to keep it in mind as people are asking what their options are.
Right. And that leave can be taken anytime within the first year, because that's kind of new, after adoption or after birth. So like if you had your child in the summer, you wouldn't have to start counting your weeks right after you could, when you come
It
back to
wouldn't be
school.
until your first
Yeah.
contract day.
Right. There's just some confusion around that. You're right, though, because it is new, and it's always good to
And I believe
educate.
there's some language about intermittent as well. that
Yeah.
It can be intermittent, so.
Right.
As long as you,
As long as it still meets the needs of the kids
well,
in the
and,
classroom.
not like a couple here and a couple, it's like,
Right.
Chunks. Yeah.
well, no, like, I can't remember the exact wording, but it's like, if you take one section here, that's a couple weeks, and then you take another section, that's a couple week, it's okay. It's not, I need 3 days of it here, and
Exactly.
then,
Yeah.
yeah.
That'd be a
They
nightmare.
essentially have to put together a plan, work
get
with
it
their
approved.
principal, get approval, but yeah, it's possible.
Okay. Oh, I remember now. It was a childcare one. Where was it? There it is.
And that is fabulous, so thank you, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the minimum 8-student requirement, that's determined by the school where the kids are at. For some
Correct.
reason, they were wondering if it was determined at the school where the staff is working. But I would think,
No, so we would be looking at, the care option would be at the school where the students were enrolled.
okay,
And so, depending on what the response is, which I hope it's very positive, we worked really hard and we appreciate our providers. We really tried to squeeze down, we know it's still a cost, but we really tried to advocate on your behalf and to try to get the best options that we could. Making sure that you all know that the design of the program is intended to support the learning of the students while they're there during those remote or hybrid phases, as well as we got them to include the 7 to 6 inclusive care as part of the pricing structure. So in case we don't have that minimum 8 at the school where your student attends, and we need to co-locate that with the next, what we would probably look at is trying to get the next closest site that's managed by that particular provider. That allows you some flexibility for that drop-off and pickup without adding additional cost, which is pretty phenomenal. And so I can't answer the question of what sites right now.
Okay.
I just have to see the response. And just ahead of this, I've had some technology glitches today, but I did get the email out. If you all hear from employees that have children enrolled in Shawnee Mission, because it is for the students that are enrolled in Shawnee Mission, that did not receive the email for some reason, I have gotten some bounce backs, just have them contact me, and I'll be happy to send that out. It also includes a link in there for them to register their enrollment interest. And so then, once I have that, I ask them to complete it by noon on Friday. Then we'll be able to know a little bit better what that spread looks like, and be able to get that enrollment finalized with each of the providers and commit to the sites.
that's great. And we will definitely, I think we can definitely put some stuff up on our ed communities.
I was just going to say.
Yeah.
I think we need to
remind our
promote
members.
that just in case there's somebody
Not paying
not,
attention.
where they can get their district email. That's
true.
And Linda, if it's helpful, I'll forward you that email.
Okay.
And I can forward it to you as well. And then if you need to send it to somebody who, for some reason, didn't get it, or
That'd be helpful.
then you can help with that too.
Add maybe a PNG, like image file of it, because that's easier for, I know, for some of our things to post things like that, especially the social medias.
I usually take a screenshot sometimes.
I know,
And
I'm
then
just
post it.
taking out, it's one of those little,
Yeah, the most important piece is if you can also make sure that that link is included for them to click on
Right.
to indicate their enrollment commitment.
Yep.
Be great.
If the school that the kids are at does not have the minimum, will the students have a say in where their kids are assigned to?
It'll probably be, first and foremost, I mean, our biggest goal is to provide the care, is to make sure we can get the care.
Right.
So I can't commit to that. It'll really just depend on how those numbers fall out.
Right, okay.
But we'll, like I said, we'll, to the best of our ability, try to locate it at the next closest, or at the next closest that doesn't have enough to make, because the reason we're doing that
Right,
is so we can provide you the care.
right.
Well, I would assume too, like if you're at a site that doesn't make it, there's probably going to be a phone call made.
Yeah, oh, yes.
And
We'll
then
let people know
there'll be
if
some
we're
communication
co-located.
and figuring out the best, what
Yeah.
works secondary.
Is it a separate sign up if we're in full remote? Like meaning if you sign up for the hybrid model and then we go full remote, or have you made a commitment to keep your kids in that care for 5 days?
So the fees will be assessed and paid on a weekly basis.
Okay.
And this is really, for me, I thought was the most phenomenal part of this collaboration. Because imagine that we know that we'll be trying to plan for those phases. But they were willing to commit to allowing our staff members to pay on that weekly basis, so that if I'm in hybrid this week, it's going to be that $75. But then say 2 weeks down the road, we say we're ready to go to remote, they'll just pay on that weekly basis. And then if conditions improve and we're able to be on site, you may not need any care at all at that point. Or you would go back to those before and after, just the standard rates if we go back to an on-site model. So it's just the weekly, but it's not on a day-to-day basis. And I don't know if that was what your question is, but if we're in a hybrid, it's $75 for the week. That's 7 to 6 care for those 3 days that they are not on-site in school, with the before and after care ability for those 2 days when they are during that particular week.
So when they sign up, do they make a commitment for the semester? I guess is what I'm asking, like, for the care?
Well, they won't be assessed except on a week-to-week basis.
Okay.
Now, it would be really difficult for our providers.
Right.
If we had people sign up and commit, and then 2 weeks down the road, people drop out. Because,
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing for you all. I mean, imagine that. You hire staff to support this program.
Right.
So that would be a really unfortunate on our part, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
If a staff member who has children does not get an email, who should they contact?
Me,
Okay.
Leanne Neal.
All right. We have been looking at some of the other districts' calendars. I know we have ours. I'm smiling behind my mask, but I know we have ours approved. And we just noticed with Olathe, for instance, they've got pretty much the same winter break and a full week at spring break, and they're still getting out before Memorial Day. And I think we've talked to Michelle about this before. I reached out to their NEA president just to find out, because they're counting the minutes before the school day starts. Like when the kids get off the bus or come in and they go straight to your classroom. So I think they're getting maybe like an extra 20 minutes a day. And I know we asked about doing that, and I think you were mentioning that would require us to add minutes to the remote day as well. Is that kind of what your thoughts were? Because I know it just seems like it was something that Olathe did, and now they were able to make up time throughout the year. And a lot of, there have just been teachers kind of across the district asking, why is that not possible for us in Shawnee Mission? So I wanted to bring that forward.
So I have two responses to that. One, there are specific criteria of when you can and cannot count minutes, and I don't have those in front of me, so I would want to look those up before I quoted them. And secondly, our elementary teachers are only on a 7-hour and 40-minute day. And so it would be very difficult to do that at the elementary level and still provide adequate supervision.
Okay.
But are they,
Do they supervise in the mornings? Is that how that works? I have to like,
Don't they come at 8:30?
I have to look at when their start and stop time in. Again, I don't have it in front of me, but I know like at most of our elementary schools, we can't even get buses loaded in the afternoon before the contract time is over without
Right.
significant.
I think we were looking at
fatigue.
like before
So I don't know
school
how
time.
we would be able to
but
reduce the elementary level. But again, I would have to go look at it.
if the students are showing up at 7:50 and reporting directly to the classroom, would we be able to count those minutes, I think is the thought.
If instruction was happening,
And I think that's what, if we're,
that
having,
means,
I mean,
that means the school day would have to start at that time. And
because then if,
offices would have to be adjusted accordingly as well.
because I think, to me, that if the expectation is that kids are showing up at this time, I would assume that there would be stuff available for them to work on. That kind
I
of
think
stuff.
the key was the school day would have to start at that time. So I'm not sure we could get buses in at that time either because of the high school routes before them. But I mean, I can look at it, but it's going to be with that 7-hour and 40-minute day, significantly that.
Is there a way, with our PD days on January 4th and February 16th, that we could also have that be a remote school day for all students where maybe teachers connect with their classes for, a certain time in the day? It would pick up, a day's worth of minutes because PD days already count for half. But that was just an idea. I think I've seen that on other calendars.
I think those are all discussions that would have to go back to the board and
Okay,
leadership team.
Sure.
I don't know that I have the authority to
right.
negotiate there.
Okay. Yeah, we're just looking at, we just noticed it just seemed like such a big difference in number of days. So I didn't know if people from your group of calendar committee ever discuss with other districts how they get their, numbers or days set up.
One of the discussions we had around calendar days for kids, that is significantly different if you look at the people around us and the number of days kids go to school. And we felt like with instruction being, I don't know that I would say cut short in fourth quarter, but definitely significant in fourth quarter, we believe it's valuable for kids to be in school more days than to reduce the number of days for
Okay.
instructional purposes.
So would you be able to have a discussion about doing a remote day for students on the PD days with your leadership group or the board?
So I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying that NEA is proposing that we decrease the amount of professional learning time by 2 days because that's indeed what would be happening.
No, I would say it could still be a professional learning day on January 4th and February 16th. The students would have something that was already kind of given to them to work on for that remote day. And I know that they need to have a face-to-face, meeting with a teacher for it to count. So each teacher would meet with their students. We'd kind of work. It'd be different at the middle and high school because they have so many teachers, but for a certain amount of time so that they could count it as a remote day. But it would still be, most of the day would still be professional development.
Honestly, Joe, I think that would not meet the guidelines. I think we would have to say it's about instruction
Okay,
or it's about professional learning. I mean, we would have to classify the day.
okay.
I haven't looked at Olathe's, you said Olathe's calendar?
Yeah,
Is it less teacher contract days as well? I'm guessing it would have to be, wouldn't it?
I think they're going back the
Pulling it up.
17. They have like a big amount of time of PD at the beginning, but they're allowed to choose different times for it, I think.
Because they're going back like a week earlier than we are.
Yeah,
Oh, they
they're
are.
going back, new teachers for them report August 20th.
Oh, no, I have it 17th.
That's new teachers.
Oh, sorry.
And then or the last day for staff is May 21st.
Wow.
They don't list on here, at least I don't see the number of staff days. They have like the number of like, student days, I think.
So they report 3 days prior to us.
Well, they're going the 20th. Oh, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe
Sorry.
that certified staff in Olathe, their contract is 177 days. That,
Oh.
it may have changed, but I kind of watch those calendars in general. So I know that Blue Valley's is like 180, and I think Olathe is, it may not be 177, it may be 179, but we go more days,
Okay.
student and staff, than the other two districts do.
Yeah, that'd be like
I was
10
just trying to
more
get the math
days.
to work out, and that, 10 less days certainly makes it,
Yeah,
Makes a
for
difference.
sure. Okay.
Hey, Jill, just double checking too on that elementary piece.
Yeah.
We can't count the minutes until school starts. And so we would have to, if we wanted to count minutes prior to, we would have to start school at 7:50.
Okay.
I think that's the time you suggested or whatever, but you can't count, so if they're counting that in that way, that means their school day started their school day early.
Okay. Linda, I have something that says Olathe's got 187 days.
I was going to say, I might have been thinking student days are
Oh, gotcha, gotcha,
177.
gotcha.
They're
So
one, yeah, but that's been, contracts change every year, and I haven't been in my
for sure.
own office for
Right.
5 months, so everything's off of the brain.
Yeah. Okay.
So as we're looking at, because I know you guys will be working on 21, 22 calendar, as we start that conversation with us ending later, is there a conversation about starting 21, 22 at the same time as typical, or pushing that date back?
I haven't been part of any conversations about the start of next school year, and
I haven't
I don't know
either.
if they've even happened yet.
Okay.
Right now, the draft that we had been working on would correlate pre-COVID. But honestly, we're just not there right now, you guys. We're scrambling day to day, get remote learning off the ground, and the adjustment of the calendar, all the adjustments that need to take place with facilities in COVID, and we have not touched the 21.
Okay, thank
All right.
you.
Thanks.
But we hear that that's, something that you guys are interested in, and we'll keep that in mind, and since we're gonna have monthly meetings, whenever that's something we can get to.
Yeah.
We'll keep that in mind for when we have our monthly meetings.
All right. There was, I remember, evaluations.
Oh, yeah.
Has there been, I know you're discussing everything but this, but discussion on how evaluations would work for, if we were in a hybrid model or if we were in a remote model, what would that look like? Would the principal be joining in and watching? Would they be watching a recorded version of it so they could kind of go back and look over it again and again? I think might be the
Yes.
concern, but
I'll take
Yeah.
a stab at that
Go ahead.
first. Yes, to all of what you said.
Okay.
Very similar to how we ended evaluations in the spring of last year, that a lot of it had to be done through WebEx or Zoom. Certainly not the typical model that we're used to, but certainly one that we're in. And so, yes, I mean, if it's a hybrid, if it's a remote, that principal or that supervisor would work with that teacher, pre-conference all of the different things that you would do and design something that's agreeable and, what it's going to look like. I thought you were going to go to the remote program with, 8,000 students and potentially, gosh, I don't know, 600 teachers. How are those evaluations going to happen? We're still working on that. So there's
Okay.
certainly, the volume is massive. Laura Brogdon can't do all of them.
Right.
It's
I don't know,
impossible.
she's
So,
very much superwoman, so no.
right. So, but there's other administrators, and certainly there's connections from those folks to their, in-person building. So we'll work out a plan. Of course, we'll work with you guys on what that looks like.
So since a lot of that comes my way, is there going to, it would be helpful if maybe there would be some common protocol as far as, this is what, if you go through the KEEP, this is what we normally do. If you're an experienced staff person, you have one formal evaluation, doesn't happen until February. If you're probationary, you have two. And a little bit of, if you're remote, obviously these are going to occur remote. If it's hybrid, I think we've always, since we've been working together with Keep 2, we've really looked at evaluation from a growth mindset.
Absolutely.
I think that that really encouraging discussion between the evaluator, the administrator, and the staff person about, hey, you have a lot of choice in what you're choosing to work towards improvement on. It would be really helpful in this process if we're communicating, if there's a time when you'd like for me to observe you, or a week where you're going to be doing something for some informal, some drop-ins, that would be great. Just anything we can do. There is this fear that, hey, if you're recorded, you might see the kid, like in high school, pulling out his Game Boy or pulling out his computer playing games in the middle class that, just people just go to that picky issue. And that might be a conversation that you have on the side, but the focus of the evaluation is still on the instruction and it's a real partnership. So I think messaging, we will do that from our end, but I think also it would be, especially that remote, what's that gonna look like? And then I think, Michael, not here at the table, but away from the table would be a good opportunity for you and I to talk about
Absolutely.
those on out-of-cycle evaluation as well.
I was going to make that suggestion, not on out of cycle, but that perhaps we should start with you and I,
Yeah.
having a dialogue and then bringing something back to this group.
Sure.
I think it'd be really beneficial. It's going to look different.
Yes.
That's what I have at the moment.
I had a follow-up question from, and I don't know if there's anyone in the room who can answer this, but we still get a lot of emails about HVAC systems, air quality, especially maybe in chemistry rooms, lab rooms, windowless rooms. And so we heard last night, Bob Robinson talked about that we're hoping to get all the filters in, but they may not all be in necessarily by the start of school. There's a better chance the scrubbers will be there. So I was just wondering, is there a priority list if principals can identify, we know that these are rooms in our building that historically have been of concern, is there a way to push those filter changes to the top? I think that's just a question that maybe you all could see if you could get the answer and get that back to,
Yeah, absolutely.
I did want, Sherry and I have been working through recent guidance from KSDE on provision of special education. During the year, they recently changed their guidance, and so Sherry has worked her butt off to, we've been interpreting that guidance, figuring out what it means for our students and our staff, putting together an FAQ for the parents of our special education students. But because of those recent KSDE revisions to their guidelines, we just kind of wanted to, as a discussion or as just a point of shared information, talk about what that might mean for our special education teachers, so that, we're all on the same page and everybody has the same up-to-date information. So I'll let you take it from there, Sherry.
Sure. So not only have we communicated FAQs to our families on 2 occasions, but we've also just as recently as yesterday, did provide some opening documentation for our staff just to allow them to start wrapping their head around things. We know that it's, there's a lot of work to be done, and one of the other pieces to that is we're going to offer our special education staff an opportunity to come in prior to their contract starting with compensation to allow us to be able to train them on some of the different nuances in regards to if a student were to require an alternative education plan and what are the details in which that would look like, and just giving them that time to be able to review the data that they would have collected last spring and map that out for them. Some of the nuances that Rachel has mentioned, in the spring, we were not able to bring students on site just due to the nature of the order that was placed. However, at this point in time, unless something were to drastically change, even if we were in a remote capacity, we may need to consider bringing some students on site to receive special education services, and that would be case-by-case determination based on the needs of the student and the type of services that maybe couldn't be replicated in a virtual capacity. And so we are building in some trainings for our staff at the beginning of the year, and then obviously we'll have ongoing support upon their return. But we just wanted to, again, open that dialogue, ensure that we're collaborating and communicating and sharing that information out.
Sherry, can you speak a little bit to maybe IEPs that are expiring or coming up for, I'm losing
Yep.
it, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Your annual visit
Absolutely.
since
So
school's delayed.
correct. And so we do have some providers who are currently working to, no regulations from IDA has changed or been flexible or anything of that nature. And so we wanted to make that as simple as possible for our staff, but yet be legally compliant as well. And so we have put into place, we've reworked our Skyward system to allow us the capacity to have staff in unique circumstances like this where we could do what's classified as an interim IEP, which is basically extending that IEP.
Okay.
It really, what it does is clones it to allow you to get the dates reactivated. You only have that available for 60 days, where at that time you would hold an annual IEP, but it does provide you a little bit of flexibility as long as the parent is in agreement with the delay.
So if a parent were not in agreement or, it was a date that you just needed to get it done, then if a teacher chose, they could come in and conduct that IEP and be paid that hourly rate, or how's that work?
I would think that if a teacher, for those annual IEPs, I guess I would say that we could be flexible one of two things. I think that we could consider that parent contact time that they would be getting early. We only have the capacity to provide them payment for that 10 hours which includes some of the training aspects of things that we would be doing. But I think between the two, whether it's that parent contact time or whether it's those 10 hours, then it should be able to be made up in that capacity.
And I think I saw that coordinators have been explaining all this to staff this week.
Yes,
Okay,
that is correct.
thank you.
Yes.
How do special ed teachers who are assigned remotely, do you conduct, I assume that IEPs will be conducted via WebEx?
I think really in many instances, I would envision a large majority of our meetings still needing to be conducted in a virtual capacity. We've put together some tips and tricks for our staff in the documentation that we provided yesterday to staff in regards to just some, online meeting etiquette, kind of different ways to navigate things. I do know it's an area that we're still working on is electronic signatures. We did determine a workaround last spring. And if we're hoping to be able to come up with a solution for that electronic signature, because that would obviously help some of the challenges with that signage at the end of the meeting.
Since we do have Adobe, I use the Adobe sign a lot, and I would wondering, it might be already part of the package that we have.
Yes.
And that makes it really easy.
It does, and so I've actually been working with ICT. That is one of the components. I mentioned the same thing. I signed a bunch of things with Adobe Sign last spring. I think that there is just wanting to ensure it's as easy to navigate for external individuals as it is for internal individuals, and then with the licensing agreement, and then the security components where those files are stored and all of those pieces. So I do know that that is one of the things that we've talked about with ICT, in addition to like DocuSign, which is obviously pretty reputable as well.
Cool.
And then I don't know if this is Sherry or Mike, but I have had contacts from SPED teachers who are concerned if they are, I've pretty much assured people yes, but if they have, high-risk personal issues or live with someone who does, or a combination, efforts are being made to make remote accommodations for SPED staff as well as secondary and elementary reg ed staff.
All staff.
Okay.
But if there's a documented concern other than just pre-existing health conditions, but a doctor's order, a physician's order, we do have an ADA form that they can complete, and so I would ask them to contact our office so that they can complete that documentation.
I referred a lot of people to your office.
Okay, very good. Very good.
See the bags under our eyes?
Yeah.
No.
I don't think you want me dispensing a lot of HR advice.
Yeah.
Hey, Michael, I think it's important for us, and this is probably better for you to state, but I'll take a stab at it and you can bail me out if I don't say it correctly, but I think it's important to note that not every position will have the ability to work remotely. Is that an accurate statement?
That's correct. And I've tried to be clear in my communication with folks that, the survey that was sent out to staff was a preference form rather than a choice form. I think there's a kind of a misnomer there that when I'm choosing remote, I'm preferencing remote. I prefer to be in that setting. So we'll take that into consideration along with many other factors, but there's not going to be a 100% score that we're going to get everyone what they prefer. So yes, that's correct.
And there is, that's perhaps one way to accommodate an individual who has a disability. There are certainly, under the ADA, it's supposed to be a cooperative discussion with the employee and the employer, and those discussions absolutely will happen. So in the instance, if that would happen, any employee, we would still have that ADA interactive discussion and say, okay, what reasonable accommodations can be made to enable you to do your job, if it is in a setting that's in person, and work with them to make sure they are enabled to do their job alongside their peers.
Yep.
And we're still hoping that perhaps people will have will know for the most part if they are assigned in building, which could be a combination of remote, in-person, in addition to being hybrid and remote, or full-on remote for the semester. Hopefully sometime next week.
That's the hope.
Okay.
That's the hope.
And that will be by principal, correct?
Yes. Got a little, not pushback, but a little concern about that timeline from the principals, and I get it, there's a lot there. But we have asked them to have initial conversations with anyone who they anticipate may have a change of placement this week, so that we can have those follow-up conversations next week.
I see that Leanne just sent us an email with the link that I completed the second I received it. I'm very excited we're going to be able to do this. I know the feeling of being concerned about your ability to complete your job when you have childcare issues. So I think it's a huge benefit for our staff, and I know it was mentioned at the board meeting last night, but I'm not personally aware of any other district that's yet been able to arrange this. It is no small feat that Leanne, has done it at this price. And as someone who regularly pays babysitters $25 a day is pretty amazing. And I believe that includes food as well, which my 6-year-old can eat well over $25 of food a day. So,
Does it include food, Leanne?
They have access to food service.
okay.
You would have to load up your food service.
Yeah.
card,
Great.
Unless free and reduced lunch families.
Okay.
Absolutely. We would-
So free and reduced lunch will still apply if you're in that, if you have free and reduced lunch. Okay.
But they can also still access food from the school cafeteria for ease. It's just loaded on just like another school day.
Just like, okay, so send a lunch or buy lunch. Okay. That's great.
And then, this is back to the settlement of the last contract, but people will start asking when 2021 contracts will be issued. Is that a Russ?
Yeah,
question?
so Russ payment will be on the September 20th paycheck for the new contract. I honestly haven't checked with Melissa on the issuance of the electronic, individual contracts, but let me get back to you on that. But payment will be on September 20th, right?
September 20th. Counselors will be August 20th.
Good.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
I'm trying to think. Sherry, did you get to share everything that we wanted just to make sure we shared in this setting?
Yeah, I think so. I think the biggest thing that I just want to emphasize is that while we are creating opportunities to ensure that we can help our staff navigate, we know that it is daunting. I would just continue to encourage, if they have questions, clarifications, please feel free to reach out to our department, or if they reach out to you, let us help and work with them. We definitely, I think that they will. We've received very positive feedback from the documents that we provided to staff last night. It's very user-friendly, searchable. Again, trying to really streamline things to make their jobs as seamless as we can, knowing all of the layers that are required.
We do have, our next meeting is the 20th, is that correct? And I know that that's when we are scheduled to be back with Stephanie and kind of start our negotiations for the next contract year. But I think to the extent we need to devote any of that time to COVID-related things, we certainly would be happy to talk about that and to prioritize appropriately to make sure that everyone has answers to their questions, so we're aware of the questions that are being asked to the extent we don't already know, and so you guys can disseminate information to your members. We had COVID as an ongoing discussion item throughout this summer, and I certainly wouldn't foresee there being any need to stop that as a discussion item to the extent the team wants to do that. So I'm absolutely, we could continue doing that.
I think it's beneficial to people to be able to hear, not only through the board meeting, both opportunities when the initial plan was released, and then last night's update. The fact that it's saved on YouTube and people can go back and hear that, that's pretty straight from the horse's mouth when you hear it from Sherry, when you hear it from Leanne, when you hear from Shelby. And same thing with this negotiation session, and maybe we can connect with David, just doing a reminder out to staff that a lot of their questions are addressed in those formats, in addition to the documents sometimes can be overwhelming for people that haven't, there's a lot there.
Sure.
So, but I think those live presentations that have been preserved really do cover a huge number of the questions that come our way. So I hope that the board will continue to ask for that as well, because I think that helps parents and staff in their parental role as well, too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Technology has its benefits, for sure.
Sure.
So, okay, well, if everyone's comfortable, I think we can probably end this meeting and then just work on the format or for our salary schedule for the P&A for this year, just to make sure everybody agrees. How it reads.
He's got it.
You better double check.
Yeah, we better double check it. Don't be
double check
giving
it.
people raises
You know, I
beyond what we've already
You
negotiated.
think I really took the effort to really go through and add money to those cells
I could
right
see you
now?
put an extra zero on the end of all those
Yeah,
numbers.
especially just that one column where I'm right at, you know. I in our group folder, there's I created another folder that says final,
Okay.
and I put everything in there. There's 3 documents, the P&A with signatures that I updated, and then just the supplemental, and then the salary schedule. And the P&A includes those in it, but it's handy for me to have them separate.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
As beautiful as a document like that can be, right? So is the one that you have in this folder, P&A 2021 with signatures, okay, so is that got the correct salary schedule in it as an attachment? You're awesome, Jay. Multitasking. Okay.
What I, use my high-level ADD for.
I thought of one more thing, and it could be for Russ. When you've finished, so many hours, say like 15 credit hours, and you want to move to master's plus 15, if you'd like that to start with the September 20th paycheck, I've always when I've had to work with Marcia Murray in the payroll office, she's always kind of given me like first couple days of September as a day that they need to have things ready to go by.
And you're talking about column movement?
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you,
so you'll need to get that into HR pretty quick.
okay. Do you guys have usually a day that you need to have it in order to have it?
September,
5th, 4th?
That's, yeah, she usually says 4th or 5th for when I'm doing other
Yeah.
things with her. Okay.
yeah.
And then do you guys need electronic copies, or I know in the past you've had like actual physical copies of the transcripts?
We're accepting either.
You're accepting either, okay.
Yeah,
A lot of universities
the
send
document
theirs
warehouse.
electronically
Okay.
now.
Perfect. I have not, taken classes since I had my master's, so I'm learning.
And it's Carol Loera.
Yeah.
Carol, okay.
I wanted to take some this summer, but
You got busy. All right.
cool.
Good discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we finished.
Thanks, guys.